Well, hello and welcome back. And this is not usual, is it? Because normally, as I said in my intro, they will never allow you anywhere close. And I think sometimes it's that unknowingness that lets us form all these perceptions about them. What is the big secret? Why can't I interview them? Why don't I get close? And anytime you hear them talk, and I keep saying them as if they are aliens, they're just talking about members of parliament, ministers and stuff. Anytime you hear them talk, it's strictly about politics or work or official. But where were they born? Where did they go to school? Indeed, were they naughty as children? Are they like us? Are they like you and I? And today, Isaac Osei, Honorable Member of Parliament for Subin in Ashanti region, says, come in and talk to me. Today, too, happens to be the day for, obviously, by the time you'll be watching it, it'll be gone. But today is the World Day for people living with disability, or people with disability. And he's passionate about that cause. I am also passionate about that cause. So by all means, as I get to find out who he is, indeed I'll even try and find out why he's passionate about that cause. So I'm going to start talking to Isaac Osei. Thank you very much for this rare opportunity. And I hope that your fellow members in Parliament would also say, let's invite them so we can all talk.
I don't think it's about Adenenyehu. I think if you ask people to talk about themselves, I'm sure that
they will.
They will. Most people will, I think most of us are open books to journalists, so we are quite ready to share things about ourselves.
Very good.
With the rest of the
Very
public.
good. Maybe we haven't done enough asking. From this is my open door. So
Yes.
from now, I'm going to do all the asking. Mr. Osei, I want to go back to Kumasi, Ashdown, because that's where you were born.
That's correct.
But then I hear you speak Fanti, in there somewhere, and I'm thinking, I'm a bit confused.
Well, Fanti is lingua franca for those who are from or trace the antecedents to the central and western regions.
Exactly.
My mother is a hunter from the Nkumsa and Zaini-Wattle families of Discove and Ajwa. So, by Akan tradition, I'm an hunter.
Okay.
But my father is Ashanti from Sepetimpum, a village it's now a town really. It's almost part of Kumasi, just outside the Kumasi airport. And he was also made in Koswohine by Utumfo Pukuwari, that's Asanteman Koswohine. He was actually the first person who occupied that position. It was created in 1985, I believe, during the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the restoration of the Asante Kingdom. And he was the first occupant. My younger brother now occupies that stool in Kumasi. So my links to Kumasi and to Ashanti are very strong. And I also consider myself a true Kumasi man. Yes.
It must be very strong because as an Akan, you're more inclined to go your mother's side where your uncles are. But you seem to have a lot of roots.
I was born certainly in Kumasi. There was a famous lady, Auntie Harriet, who was a midwife. So I was delivered at a midwife's maternal home. And then I came back to KO 112. Anybody who knows Kumasi and knows Ashanti New Town knows that every house had a number.
Okay.
These days we are talking about house numbering as if it never existed in Ghana. But I was born in KO 112.
Wow.
My grandfather lived in KO 95. When you see KO, you know that it's Ashanti New Town because there's a section called Krobo and another section called Odumase. So you see OI or KO, you know the person is from Ashanti New Town. So that's where I was born.
So it's existed before?
Oh yeah,
I'm surprised
the numbers are still there.
It must have been significant because you just know the numbers.
Yeah, I mean, when you mention your house number, anybody who is born in Kumasi can say that, oh, your grandfather is Mr. Nkumsa or Nana Osun Kwantebisa. I mean, they know.
Wow.
Those who live there know. So I was born there, started school at the state primary school. We had to walk from Ashanti New Town to go to State Primary School near Swami. And we worked every day of the week, went in and out. And in 1960, my father brought me to Accra, and I went to Achimota Primary School. Continued at Achimota School, University of Ghana, and then started working.
Wow, wow. But those were the good old days, if I may say.
Well, everybody talks about the good old days. I'm sure when you are older, you will also talk about the good old days.
You think it's going to get worse than this?
I don't know whether it's really worse. I think no matter where you find yourself or the circumstances of the society that you live in, you make the best of it.
Did your father also say the good old days?
My father always talked about the good old days. But
Really?
I have the feeling that maybe his latter days were better than when he was very young as a schoolboy in Kumasi. I get the same feeling that things have advanced, and if you are part of that advance, then you feel rather secure. You know, I feel rather secure in myself, yes.
You see, because your time in Legon, you probably slept two to a room.
Yes, my time in Legon, I was in Commonwealth Hall at the University of Ghana. My time in Legon
You look very
was
calm to be in Commonwealth Hall.
well, Commonwealth Hall, we had all kinds of people there, but it was a great place to be, and I cannot see myself as anything but a vandal.
No, you don't look like a vandal.
Well, I don't know whether there's a stereotype of a vandal look, but I think vandals are very progressive, forward-looking people, generally speaking. And in my generation of, many of the people in my generation of students, I think they have made it in several spheres of life. There are a lot of them in politics. Unfortunately, many on the other side, but that's the way it goes. I mean, we all cannot be in the same place at the same time. So it's good to have some diversity, you know, in the political opinions that we had. And Vandal City was very interesting. Achimota School was good. And I think my life hasn't been too bad since then.
No. And you worked hard for it, and you don't owe any apologies for it either.
No, you shouldn't. Actually, what is useful for a country is to have successful people, and so that they
And
can...
plenty of them.
Yeah, so that they can also create wealth for the enjoyment of people who are close to them, or anybody that they choose to dispense their largesse on. So the important thing is to be able to work within yourself, you know, not overstretch yourself, stay healthy, and enjoy the fruits of your labor. I mean, that's the way I think. Yeah.
I believe that too. I think it's okay. But in Commonwealth Hall, did you know that in 2013 I'll be sat in Parliament and fighting for my people of Subay?
Well, when I was in Commonwealth Hall, in my second year at the university, I became the national president of the Ghana UN Students Association, which at that time was the largest or biggest students body in the country, because we were all over the place in secondary schools and in the 3 universities at that time, in the various polytechnics. And I used to travel a lot, you know, talking about the ideals of the United Nations. And you mentioned in your introduction that today is the International Day for Persons with Disability. So the whole UN thing, where they specify days where we are supposed to highlight certain aspects of our own life, disability is with us. So that's one aspect. Next week, December 10th, is Human Rights Day. You know, and I'm sure
That's a big one.
that we should talk about human rights, because it's the very ethos of modern democracies.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
we'll get. I want to dedicate a whole section of the interview
Yeah.
for these two things, because I think we are really lacking in that. From when you left university, what was your first job and how difficult was it to get it?
I left university in 1973. It was not difficult at all. I could have chosen a whole range of places to go and work. But in the end, General Kutua Champon had at that time established the National Service Scheme. So in 1973, those of us who were leaving university were the first graduates to start the National Service Scheme.
Okay.
So I was sent to the Ministry of Finance and economic planning because I had studied economics. And I enjoyed my time there, working under various people. I remember Charles Abakan, who was my immediate boss. He had come back from the States. So at that time I said, well, maybe I should also go to the States and do a master's program. And then Sam Daisy, whom I worked with later in the macroeconomic division, and Dr. J.L.S. Abe, who was our boss in that division. We had people like Mrs. Mary Chinrihese, who was our principal secretary at that time. You know the famous Chinrihese report. And she was a presidential advisor subsequently to President Kufuor. And the ministers I worked with, Dr. Kwame Donkofojuo, who was a young man, very bright young man, who actually had the finance portfolio because General Kutu Champon was supposed to be the minister. But the work was being done by Dr. Kwame Donkofojuo. He left and became president of ADB. Yeah. And then we had Dr. Robert Gardner, who had come back from the ECA to become Minister of Economic Planning. So I had the fortune of watching some of these great men of our country at work. And it rubs off on you, Dr. Gardner, for example, wanted to encourage those of us who were very young to write position papers, to come up with ideas, and then he would call you and tell you that, hey, this piece that you wrote, this is the implication of it. I think there was a particular paper I wrote on the removal of price controls. You may not understand it, but when we were growing up, every price had to be fixed by somebody. And the ministry had sent me to America. I had gone to do my master's in development economics. I came back, and I was asked to look at the situation regarding price controls. And then I wrote a paper to Dr. Gardner indicating that I did not think that price controls worked and that the forces of supply and demand should be what we should look at to determine what the prices should be. He looked at me and said, young man, you just come back from America with your American ideas, but this is Ghana. There's an element of social protection in the prices that we offer. So I asked him whether the market was not a better place for the market, for the prices to be determined, and that civil servants sitting here and in the prices and incomes board. I was of the opinion that that board should be scrapped. It was not necessary. It was a waste of government funds, and so on and so forth.
You're a rebel.
I was not a rebel, but I was an idealist maybe at that time. And there were other things which happened during my time there. But very soon I found myself out of the ministries. And I thought I could have a more challenging atmosphere to work. And I became commercial manager of the Ghana Tourist Development Company under the able leadership of Abel Eduse.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Beleduse was our managing director. Indeed, the company's first managing director was Kofi Annan, who later became UN General Secretary. Beleduse was one of those who was subsequently exchanged with Susudis in that saga. Era. And later he came back and became managing director of GNPA. Yeah. But he was a good man, a good manager who had the capacity to delegate responsibilities. And young as I was in my 20s, and head of a department, I think he guided me very well, and I'm very grateful to him.
Asafo was there at the time?
Asafo was our financial controller, the latest Asafo, unfortunately. And my office was next door to Asafo's office. Kojo Hagen, Isaac Kojo Hagen, he was in charge of projects. Later on, I moved to that division as head. And that was the time that we had the Palm Court restaurant. The various casinos in this country were partners. We bought Elmina Motel, which is now the Golden Beach Resort.
There was an agenda for tourism.
There was an agenda for tourism. Tourism development was at the heart of what we were doing. So we had the duty-free, diplomatic, and foreign exchange shops. These days, all provisions are all over the place. In our time, they were not. So we had to find a mechanism for getting the customers, people who would normally go over the weekend to Lomé just to buy provisions. And so we set up a place at the trade fair site, and that was where anybody who had foreign exchange could go In those days, it was illegal to have foreign exchange outside the banking system. So the Bank of Ghana agreed that we should have a place where we could do this. So I was in charge of the shops. I was in charge of our commercial operations, which included the Kwaba Travel and Tours Limited, the casinos, as I mentioned, the Palm Court restaurant on the beach.
Yeah.
You know, it's very sad to see it in such a decrepit state, but it was the top restaurant in Accra. Chinese as well as continental, 2 restaurants there. And I believe we ran that company quite successfully under Abel's leadership. Unfortunately, there was this 1981 coup d'etat. Before that, there was 79, where they seized our passports because we're dealing with foreign exchange. Foreign exchange rang alarm bells in people's minds. They seized our passports. This was under Jerry Rawlings, and there was an investigation. When I was cleared, I had it in mind to leave government service because it was a government company. My managing director advised that, well, I'd been here for only 2 years, I might as well stay, and I did. But after the 81 coup, I said I would not work for government again. So I set up my own consulting firm. And I think I made the right decision at that time. Worked as a consultant, eventually to government, USAID, the World Bank, JICA. I did a job also for DFID, and then for UNCTAD as well. I was first a national consultant, and they made me an international consultant, doing work in the area of international trade, especially with the Uruguay round agreements and so on and so forth. With the World Bank, we were able to, my company, Ghana Exim Economic Consultants, which included guys like B.K. Eduse Jr., Victor Newman, J.D. Atifa, and William Yabua, Gloria Puku, who is now a Foreign Service officer. We formed the core of the company, and we were the people who actually established a system for prioritization of feeder roads investments, you know, and that is the system which the World Bank used to bring in money for us to develop our feeder roads, you know. I believe that in one form or the other is the same system that is being used here in other countries. So we developed that system working with Clive Daniels, a UK-based consultant. Subsequently, we're doing all the jobs ourselves. So there are thousands of reports that we have written, some which have been very useful to the country. And we go on from there. It was good, financially good, you know, and then intellectually stimulating for us, yes.
I'm an Achamponist, so I need to go a little bit back to the Achampon days.
Yes.
That doing spirit, are we ever going to have it back? Because I felt he was a doer.
I think Achampon is somebody whose legacy has been denigrated. And if you look at some of the things that he did, maybe history will judge him kindly. You look at some of the major projects in this country, the Pond Dam, the Sueboa workers' housing, the whole of Dansuman, built under Champon's regime. Yes, so many of them. Champon's government, the whole Operation Feed Yourself thing with Colonel Benasco leading the way. So Champon did some good. The fact that in those days people said that this man ought to be shot for one reason or the other, I think maybe in another 50 years, the country will judge him more fairly.
Unless we are writing the history now, in 50 years there will probably be nobody.
Well, maybe when I write my book, I will.
You acknowledge it.
I will state the facts as I know them.
Okay.
You know, and just as I've stated, I think he did a lot of good work in the area of development, you know, for our country. Unfortunately, because of that Unigov concept, the concept itself in theory sounds all right, but in practice, he just wanted a perpetuation of the military regime, which many of us abhorred. So, but you cannot fault him on the development that he undertook in this country, yes.
I was in UK when you were ambassador. Must add that he's Ambassador Isaac Osei. And I think your tenure as an ambassador was very exemplary. You were very personable, and you did very well. But the UK is very, very challenging.
Yeah.
Where would you get the experience from? Because you've never been ambassador before.
No, I was a businessman, a consultant, doing my consultancies, traveling all over the place, and then I was running Intravenous Infusions Limited at Koforidua. I was the managing director there. It was while I was there that the president asked me to see him, and when I came, he told me I was going to London. In fact, my reaction was, so I'm not going to London. I'm going to Geneva to meet my principals. And he says, no, I'm appointing you as our High Commissioner there, and I don't want you to let me down. And his reason was that, and he said it in P. He said, Isaac, wait to me, any Ghana for na kotete abete. Then so we say wait to me, Queen Elizabeth and Swako Cheti, and nothing American. And I took a cue from it that he wanted me to work closely with Ghanaians living in the United Kingdom. But at the same time, he felt that my responsibilities, especially my representational responsibilities as an ambassador, should not be lost on me. And, Kufuor had all these witticisms. I consider him a very great man, arguably the most successful president that we have had in the history of our country. That's my view. I know there are many people who debate this, but that is what I think. Because not only did he bring dignity to the office of president, but he put in motion many, many things which, if we had continued, would have stood our country in good stead. As for the tenure as High Commissioner, I felt it was not really different from what I was doing as a businessman. I had some resources, I had personnel, and then we had clear goals which had been defined by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So with that in mind, it was how best you use your resources to maximize the return to your country. Whether you define the return as the image of Ghana, or whether you define it in terms of economic diplomacy, which we're enjoying to promote. I think I did my best. And I think when you go to a place, you just do your best. If you know you have given your all, you should be satisfied. It isn't every time that when you do your best, you attain the results that you expect. But there's nothing wrong with it so long as you know that you put in your best. And this is all I require of budding politicians. You go there, you know that you are there to serve your country, and you serve to the best of your ability. Once you are able to do that, I think you'd have done so. And then we must understand that public service is of a transient nature. You come, but you will go, and somebody else will take your place. So whether you are there as a member of parliament, as a minister, as a president, your time will come when you have to exit and allow other people to do their bit also. So when I left the UK in 2006, I had no regrets at all. I felt I had done my best. I may not have achieved all the goals that I set for myself, but I think I did my best. And then, I came to Cocoa Board.
We're going to take a break here, and then we're going to go to Cocoa Board, time in Cocoa Board, find out about the cocoa yields, and also at what time did Ambassador decide to become MP. Stay tuned. Well, I'm here talking to Ambassador MP Isaac Osei, all the accolades, economist, name it. And it's wonderful because, as I said, not very often do you get close to a member of parliament to interrogate him. And he's been open and we're having a good chat. Ambassador, when you came to Cocoa Board, is it your tenure that we achieved the 1 million tons? Or
no, on the contrary, but you understand that cocoa does not fruit in a year.
I know.
And doesn't fruit in 2 years. I mean, if you are lucky, 3 years with the new varieties that we have developed at Crick. So obviously, something must have been done during the time that I was Cocoa Board Chief Executive to ensure That yes.
yields.
And indeed, in 2007, I made an announcement that in a space of 3 to 5 years, Ghana was going to get to 1 million tons. I made it because I had been assured by our scientists at the Cocoa Research Institute of Ghana and also those who worked at head office that if we did certain things, we would achieve the 1 million tons. I discussed the matter with President Kufuor, and he said, go ahead and do what you can. And I want to give a lot of credit to Dr. Appiah. Dr. Appiah was the director of, he's now dead, unfortunately. Dr. Appiah was the director of the Cocoa Research Institute at Tafo. And within a week or so after I had taken over in March or April of 2006, I went to Tafo to have a discussion with him, and I broached the subject of 1 million tons. I said we had moved from 300 and something to 700, and I felt that it was now time for us to scale it up to 1 million tons. And he explained to me what could be done. So I put it in the context, and I said, let us invest, first of all, in yield-enhancing schemes, which had already been started by my predecessor, Kwame Sapon, who I think deserves a lot of credit for what eventually happened. And then secondly, the yield-enhancing schemes were of two parts. One was the mitigation of the effects of diseases and pests. You know, we had a program called CODAPEC, Cocoa Diseases and Pests Program, which attacked the merits and capsids which were affecting cocoa trees. And this is what everybody calls mass spraying, you know. But in mass spraying, if you train the operators, then you know that you have the results that you want. And then secondly, we were spraying also against the black pod disease, because black pod can devastate cocoa farms. And so we decided that we have to upscale this and ensure that it covered the whole of the cocoa growing areas of the country. And my slogan was Yamontra. We were not going to move away from somebody's farm because we didn't like his face or because he was not in the same political party or some silly thing like that.
Spray every cocoa tree.
Spray the whole place. There were certain areas which were capsids endemic and others which were black pod endemic. And then we had the third problem of the swollen shoot, which is a virus disease, just like AIDS. When it attacks you, you either excise it or, you know. So what we had to do was to remove them. And because the new varieties were getting better and better, becoming more disease resistant, drought resistant, we could replant these new varieties which had been developed at Craig but multiplied by the seed production unit of Cocoa Board. So we had all these cocoa stations with the seeds. So that was the genesis, you know, of the program. And then in addition, we added fertilizers, you know, to the program. And companies like Rienco and Chemico and Sidalco were brought in to support both the CODAPEC program and then the yield enhancing fertilizer program. So we were bound to do it. What we said was that we were moving the fertilizer application rate in the first instance from 5% coverage to about 20%. With that, we knew we'd get to 1 million tons. Okay. The challenge now is to move it from 1 million tons further up. And I think it can be done. But it can only be done if we sustain the investments. If you don't invest, you shouldn't expect results. So that is what I would say. I wouldn't like to pass a judgment on my successors, you know, but all I'm saying is that if you do things in a particular way and achieve certain results, and you continue doing those same things in an expanded manner, you probably do better. So,
now, you being the boss of Cocoa Board, you might know this, but apparently, because of the subsidies and the spraying and the fertilizer and everything, it actually costs more per acre than you get fruits to sell. I don't know, that it costs about $4,000 to produce a ton of cocoa, which you then sell for $2,500.
Well, I mean, if the economics you are talking about is right, then we wouldn't be making any profit.
So it's not.
So I haven't looked at the numbers, but I can say that we did very well, and we had surpluses which we would normally pay to the exchequer. But you see, we also had to be responsible when it came to cocoa prices. The danger of a temporary spike in prices is to use political criteria to increase the price of cocoa. You know, cocoa goes over 3,000 per ton, you immediately increase it. Then when it falls, what do? The other day in the budget, the minister was telling us that because world prices, etc., 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 government had to sacrifice 65% of its export duty in order to maintain the price. But the genesis of the problem has to do with price fixing in an earlier problem. I mean, just to put it generally.
Entering into politics and looking at our politics, aren't you too fine of a gentleman to wander into this wilderness?
Well, you are the one calling me a fine gentleman. I don't know how I see myself, but I think we need a lot of fine gentlemen in politics, don't you?
I do.
I think that the Ghanaian out there is generally a very nice person. The people who are watching us every day, who are going about their normal duties without the political tack. Many of the people of Ghana you meet are very nice people. You go to a village and you want help, you get help. Your car breaks down somewhere on the road, people stop to help you. That is the Ghanaian. So if so-called nice people don't want to go into politics, then we will have people who are probably not so nice. It's just like people who have experience, who are articulate and do not want to play a role in politics. I will urge them to think twice. If good people don't go into politics, bad people will take it over. And when bad people take it over, then the country suffers, because their mindset may be well different from what most Ghanaians have. So I will encourage as many people as possible who want to serve their country to go into politics. But I must caution that politics is not the only way to serve your country. There are other things you can do also.
At the moment, if you were to go out there and get a public perception, if there was a scale, 10 being the worst, and I ask anybody out there, what do you think of an MP? They will probably say 12. They will go over the scale.
Yeah.
What are MPs doing to change this perception or the PR work to let the people know that maybe we are not all evil and indeed we are there for the good? What are you guys doing?
The problem is that there's so much propaganda in the air, But if we pause a little and look at the whole spectrum of people in Parliament, there are very nice people on both sides of the aisle. And maybe these people are not coming forward enough. And then also, I think your profession, journalism, has to highlight some of the things people are doing in their constituencies, and so on and so forth. What you want, many journalists want is to see a sensation. Somebody is attacked. Somebody has done some naughty thing in some corner, and so on and so forth. That is what the public is interested in. But is that what the country ought to be interested in? And journalists set the agenda, often. Politicians, sometimes we buy into that agenda, and sometimes we can also set it by our behavior, But I think that what this country needs is for us to look at what the development agenda of the country is. We need to make our people better off than, when we joined this area.
Is the system not so polarized that it consumes you even if you're good? And the reason I say that is, if I were to come and propose something in Parliament today, even as a neutral person, as soon as the left side says yes, the right side says, well, is no. And it's funny enough, almost every single one on this side agrees, almost every. And then you wonder, how do you all come to the same agreement? You're all different orientation.
Well, absolutely. Even on the same side of the house, we have our different perspectives. We come from different constituencies. I come from an urban constituency, Kumasi. My constituency is in the center of Kumasi, surrounded by maybe 7 or 8 other constituencies. All the place from the Central Hospital through Golden Tulip, up the KMA, Edum, Asafo, and Mekum, right in the heart of Kumasi. The needs of the people there are quite different from those in a typical rural constituency. So clearly, we can, if we are not careful, be talking at cross purpose.
But see, I like the example you gave. However, in making a decision, everybody on MPP or everybody on NDC, 99% of the time arrive at the same decision.
On the contrary, you see, about 90% or 95% of the things that are brought before Parliament, we agree on consensus. If you've watched it very carefully, once the matter is referred to committee, at the committee, we don't know political colors. At the committee, we look at Ghana and say that this is good for Ghana. So when the committee report, of which I have been a part, comes to the floor of Parliament, and the chairman moves the motion and I second it, you cannot. I can have issues with it, but I will support it. And in fact, in 95% of the cases, I have not seen any level of discord. But there are certain things which, as a matter of principle, we worry about. For example, anytime the government borrows and we are not satisfied with the terms because we feel it is not in the interest of Ghana, then as one man, anybody on our side who gets up will say that we want to protect the public interest. And therefore, we will not agree. The government feels that they should not be defeated. So, on the motion, on the floor of Parliament, and therefore the government mobilizes its people.
In this case, let me go to the
government.
And
they come and talk.
They borrow money, and the terms are clearly doesn't make sense. However, everybody from that side will say, yep, we are backing this deal. Is there not one single person who can stand up and say, listen, let's get this money, but at least let's change the terms?
Well, they may not say so. On the face of it, what you're saying is probably right. But we know there have been several things like this Chinese 3 billion thing. We're not against the loan at all.
No, but the terms, the terms are wrong.
We felt the terms were atrocious, and we felt there were certain things that had to be done. Subsequently, the government agreed and did those things quietly, brought it to Parliament early, and some of them were passed. That we wanted all the subsidiary agreements to be agreed prior to disbursement, And this was something which, for some strange reason, they were not willing to accede to.
But how can I not talk about disabled or people with disability today, even though it's going to be aired later? But before I even start, I was in Parliament when the budget was read. And I had to go up a flight of about 50 stairs. And I was thinking, if I'd come there with a wheelchair, that means I need to go to the back because you are not allowed to use the front because you can't walk. And in there are 275 Ghanaians who are representing the 25 million of us to make sure that every public access has a disabled entrance. And yet we don't have it.
Well, in fact, we have a law, which I talked about today in Parliament. That is Act 715, which is the People with Disability Act. When the Act was passed, it took several years before the regulations which will enforce the Act was put in place. Then, after that Act was passed, the United Nations also came up with a convention which Ghana signed in March 2007. It took us 5 years before we ratified that. Once you ratify it, it becomes part of the law. And we realized that certain provisions of the convention supersedes what we have done in our law. So there's the little matter of bringing Ghana's law in conformance with the convention. You see, the convention sets international standards, which all the signatories must adhere to. even concerning our own law. The issue is there's a sunset clause which says that within a certain number of years, all public buildings should have access for the disabled. All public buildings should have access for the disabled. So that is the way it should be. But you go to many schools, especially in the rural areas, and people still carry on their backs kids, to put them in the classroom, or else their disabled children will not have an opportunity.
No, even in Accra.
Yeah.
Even in
So
Accra.
I have seen it, and it saddens me that this sort of thing should go on 8 years or 7 years after the Disability Act has been passed. And a point was made that in Parliament, this, and I felt rather disturbed, because I felt disturbed not because there wasn't an alternative access. I felt disturbed because that alternative access is normally blocked only for parliamentarians and people who work there. So really, in effect, the disabled do not have, and maybe we have to reconfigure the place and create a ramp where people can go along it and, to access. But it's not just Parliament. In the hospitals, in schools, in clinics, all over the place, The question that what we have to do, perhaps, is to include the ramps and your lifts in the building codes of the various district assemblies. That is one way in which we can help the disabled. But the reason why I made that statement on the floor was for people to understand that the disabled are about 10-15% of the population. Any country which just ignores 15% of its population must be doing something wrong. We must be doing something wrong, because every disabled person has certain innate, inherent abilities. Today, many of the disabled came to Parliament, to highlight that this was their day. The famous actress Adwoa Smart was with them. You look at Adwoa Smart, in some of our villages, you won't look at her twice. But look at the work she's doing. It shows that she has abilities, and everybody has recognized her abilities as an actress. The witticisms which come out of that lady's
contributing
mouth,
to the arts.
Contributing to the arts, Today, I saluted 3 gentlemen I knew. One was Dr. Seydou Dana, who is the Minister for Chieftaincy. And I felt his example of a visually impaired person rising to the level of a Minister of State is an instructive lesson for us to understand that there's no glass ceiling for anybody, so long as that person is given an opportunity. Secondly, I also talked about my young friend Richard Ofe. Richard Ofe used to play football with Michael Essien and others in Liberty Professionals in the year 2000, not too long ago, 13 years ago. Unfortunately, he was knocked down by a vehicle and he had to have one of his legs amputated. But Richard did not give up. What he did was to gather some of his colleagues who also were physically challenged, amputees, and they formed the amputees team, which became the national challenge, the national amputees team, which won the Africa Cup, And I feel such stories are inspiring. They won the Africa Cup. They have traveled all over the world, to the UK, to Brazil, to playing football, representing our country, and showing...
Selling the country.
Absolutely. And today, that gentleman came to Parliament, and he was recognized. The Parliament recognized that group which came in there. Yesterday, they went to cut the sword for an academy for amputees and people who are physically challenged, so that whilst they play their games, they can also have education. They've just started, and I'm using your medium to ask for as much support for the foundation which is building this thing. It's in Dominacy in Comenda, the Comenda area. We need to support such efforts. This afternoon, at 3 p.m., they are playing football. And that's why I came home, to go and change so that I can go and watch the football at the Accra Stadium. I know not many people will go, perhaps because they haven't heard about it. But I will go, just as a mark of respect and support for them. This morning, I also talked about Dr. Kwesi Che. We call him Doctor. He's the communications director of my party in my constituency. Dr. Kwesi Che was affected by poliomyelitis when he was very young. So he has a disability in one of his legs. But he did not just lie down. Today he's become a famous designer of men's clothing. You know, he sews the clothing as well. And then he's one of the most able communicators on any subject on the radio stations in Kumasi. You know, so all these people are showing that they can...
They need understanding, not sympathy.
That is the thing. That is the thing. You see, we have too many sociocultural barriers.
Yes.
Our attitudinal postures don't help them, you know. And there are physical barriers. You won't find any road in this country where there's a walkway where people of disability
are supposed to walk on.
Today, Frida Prempe, the MP for Tano North, she took the N1 highway and said, how do you expect somebody in a wheelchair to cross the N1 highway? Because no provision has been made for them. And it should not be that we can develop our country without including the disabled in the development process.
15%.
15% is huge. And I will always speak for the disabled. And I'm sure there are many people. I know Honorable J.H. Mensah was involved with disability sports for a long time until he himself was not fit enough to continue.
Let me throw in this, that, you see, normally we look at the cantonments, the Roman hills, the Roman Ridge, to see if a country is developing. But to see if a country is developing is what is happening in the mental health units, the special schools, you know, that's where your prisons. So if we look at these areas, aren't we being deceived that we are developing? Because indeed, it's in a very, very deplorable state that even mental homes are only in the south, nothing in the north. But yet still we say we are developing. Are we deceiving ourselves?
Well, let me put it this way. This area where I live, North Laboni in cantonments, this place has been here since the 1960s. This house, even though it's modified by myself, was purchased in 1963 or 64. So all this area is very old. The important thing is what we add on to this. How those who one would say are downtrodden, how we lift them up, you know. During the era of the PNDC, one of the secretaries or ministers was reported to have said that if he can't bring Nima to the level of cantonments, then he's going to reduce cantonments to the level of Nima.
Very shallow.
I think so.
Very
I think
shallow.
so. I couldn't agree more with you.
Yeah.
What we need is a concerted effort to deliver public services. Concerted efforts. Most of the people who may live in Nima would certainly benefit from proper drains, for example. They will benefit from a properly sited hospital if something should happen to somebody there. Some of us in this area can afford to go to the Aka clinic just around here. But there are many people who must have the public services. When you are traveling, you want to travel in the comfort of, public transportation of some sort, And what we do to provide social safety nets.
On that basis.
That's the key for me.
On that basis, my question then is, are we misguided in our development, that we are not developing?
Well, if you live in a tower of your own, then surely you will say that, we are getting on. But in my own constituency, in the heart of Kumasi, there are places where access to water is difficult. So as a member of parliament, if I'm given certain resources, I felt it was my duty to provide at least a borehole for the people of the area. Only last week, I presented, using funds from the NHIA, I presented a pickup to the Children's Hospital in Kumasi, a brand new pickup, to enable them to do their outreach programs. Because there are many people outside, just on the periphery of Kumasi, who do not have access, but the doctors can go to them. And this is what we try to do with this. And it's the only children's hospital outside the Princess Marie Louis Hospital here, and I felt we should support them. We have put in place a laboratory which is being supported by international organizations. So at least people who come there, there's an eye clinic which is coming up. We're trying to do small things. But an MP's job is to pass legislation. But at the same time, you have to be somebody who can facilitate development for your area.
Ambassador MP, the next time I come and sit here, would I be referring to you as Mr. President?
I don't know.
Maybe 2017?
I don't know. I will only say that within the party that I belong to, there are very good people there, any of whom, if they chose to stand, can become president. I may or may not compete, depending on the circumstances and my own idea of whether I will win, should I participate. But I think all of us as politicians ought to understand that your contribution does not come only when you become president. At the moment, we are building our party. Mm-hmm. When we've built the party and it's strong enough, anybody that emerges as our presidential candidate has as good a chance to win power.
Ambassador, with the cost and the system that it's involved in becoming a president or running for election, can anyone be a leader? Can you only be a manager? I mean, the cost is too much. Indeed, is all that money for free and charity and never ever going to be paid back? Or it will hinder your judgment in governing?
Let me put it this way. Look, you are only a leader because people follow you. Mm-hmm. You cannot be a leader without a fellowship. Let me put it that way. Those who follow you have a responsibility to support you fully, not only in raising the required resources to do what you want to do, but also they have a responsibility to keep you in check should you be misguided.
But then they paid for you. So their responsibility is now for you, even not to break the rules, but to make sure they get their money back.
You see, that is not the way those of us of the liberal democratic tradition see politics. We see politics as an avenue to serve. If you feel you cannot serve the people of your country, then you should not be in politics. If you are supporting a leader with the sole aim of recouping what you have invested, then you are not really following the leader. Then you are following the money. You see, your job is to support him, either financially or morally or whatever. But you expect him to do a good job for the country. You see, the focus of all our activities ought to be the country, not ourselves. That is why I always say that people who have experience in other areas, either in business, if you've made some money, in academia, if you've proved yourself and published and done all kinds of things, in management, in all these spheres, then you can bring your experience to bear. But there are few people.
There's no free lunch.
I agree. There's no free lunch. I agree. And the way you can repay your people is by doing a good job, by providing adequate public services, by ensuring that the schools, are properly run, and that there are teachers in those schools to teach, by ensuring that the hospitals are adequately equipped. That is what you can do to repay the faith other people have in you. If you cannot do that, then you are not a leader. Or if you think you're a leader, then you are not worth what the people are supporting you with. This is why on the floor of Parliament, some of us have consistently talked about the delivery of public services. Because really, what is the government there for? Not just to maintain security.
I still insist that the amount of money an individual would put into a party, no matter how much you believed in the country, it is so that at the end of the day, even if you don't break the rules or whatever it is, you need to lay some groundwork for me to recoup that money.
You are looking at maybe a few money bags, people with huge resources. You may come and say, Isaac, say you are competing for president, I will give you 1 million cedis. I say, thank you very much. Somebody will say, I can afford 10 cedis. Okay?
Those ones are good, because those ones you don't owe them
If
back.
I can get 100,000 people to give me 10 cedis.
That's better.
I get but this is precisely the point. The point about the expansion of the polling stations thing was to bring on board a whole gamut of people who can support the political party, our political party. That was the whole idea. And each of them contributing 1 CD a month. That is enough oil, to turn the wheels of any political machine. For me, that is it. You may have 1 or 2 people who...
Should we put some limitations
absolutely,
to cut down the cost?
Absolutely.
Because the extravagance during a campaign...
Not the cost. What you should do is to have a political party financing law in place so that there are limits on what individuals can contribute. I know in the UK, there are limits. I can't remember exactly what it is.
There's a limit.
In the US also, there are limits. So when you give 20,000, you can't give any more. This means that the political party has to organize itself at the grassroots and convince the grassroots that it is an alternative government waiting, or that it is governing you well.
But here we have a situation where you need to dash T-shirts, where the other way they buy the T-shirts. So it makes
I know in some of our constituencies, people sold their T-shirts, and they were bought. They were bought by people. And I know people are still contributing 1 CD a month. To mobilize funds for their political party of their choice. Look. Anywhere in the world, there will always be money bags in the business of politics. There will be. But you have to minimize it. You have to have a delicate balance between what is right and what is good, for your country.
Well, I must say, you see, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't bad after all. It was exciting. It was revealing. And I have enjoyed it. And I promise to ask a few more MPs to allow us into their homes so they share their stories. Let's share their stories with that. So, Ambassador MP Isaac Osei, thank you very much.
Yes,
and enjoy your match today at the stadium.
Yes.
My name is Nadan Sakwao. This has been Personality Profile. And as I say, until next Friday that I come to you with another personality, enjoy your week.